Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Metagame Book Club. So this is for Track 2 for the win. This is the third week, and so we have a lot of familiar faces here with us today. So we have Kay on camera, and we have Jerry.
Hello.
We have Blue.
Hi.
We have Trish.
Hi.
Cam is still really engrossed in that book.
Hello, everyone.
And we also have Grid as well.
Good morning.
So for today, we're going to go ahead and cover Track 2 reading for Week 3. We're going to talk a little bit more continuing character study, a bit more about narrative. So we'll talk about trials and conflict. Once again, we'll have virtual economics. We'll have Area 52, and we'll also talk about the Week 4 overview. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Blue. So in case you don't know what text you're using by the third week in a 4-week book club, we're using For the Win by Cory Doctorow. And so feel free to check that out. It's also available. You can also get it for free at a wide variety of resources. So first off, Blue is going to talk about character study.
Hi, guys. We will... this section of the book has been very intense. Lots of things are coming together, but we still have some unanswered questions. But we're going to jump on those and tackle them as we come to them. So, after you see there, this is more of a relationship map. So, what this is talking about is how people are interacting with each other. And as you can see in the center, we have the Webleys because it seems to be all intertwined together with the Webleys. So I'm going to start with Wei Dong Leonard. He's the orange circle in the top left-hand side. I'm going to go counterclockwise to really discuss and talk about him. So Wei Dong Leonard, he's the guy who's in San Francisco, California. The main people in his life is the mother, the father, and his guildmates. So we have the interaction with the Webleys. Now, he doesn't necessarily know what's going on with Webleys, but he knows that he wants to join. He called Lou trying to figure out what was going on, and he was like, well, the Webleys are all over the net, and he was like, oh, I want to do something, I want to help, but he doesn't know how to go about doing that, and Lou's is at the train station trying to escape police pursuit, so he can't really talk to him, but Leonard is still going through lots of trials and tribulations with his own mother and father. At this time, I mean, it's been a couple of months, and he's been on his own. But we have that Wei Dong and Matthew. Between those two circles, we have the arrow pointing to both of them. That means that they're having like a working relationship, and that they're doing different interactions with each other. Such as Matthew, we found out that he is the guild leader that Wei Dong belongs to, and they're in close contact that way. Whereas Wei Dong is a guildmate, has been helping, he's been healing. Wei Dong has been the confirmed healer for their group, for their raids. And they have a really good working relationship. So if we're going to go to Matthew's blue circle, in Matthew's world, he's in Shenzhen, China. And his people of interest are Ping, Lu, or now that we know him as Tank, Giandi, his guildmates again, and Boss Wing, as well as the hitman for Boss Wing, but we don't know any of the Boss Wing's names for the hitman, other than he has muscle that tries to hold him. So, his interactions with the Webleys, you see that we have two arrows pointing back and forth, but they're indirect conflicts with each other. So we have Matthew, who is trying to separate himself from Boss Wing, and he's trying to get the support of the Webleys. Well, the Webleys all trying to help him. They were trying to do, even though Matthew was in the physical realm trying to repel people, the Webleys are trying to help online, trying to block out other gold farmers so that he can keep his job, so that supposedly they were working for better working conditions, better pay, and better treatment, which is a really huge goal to work with. And I know the encompassing of the section that we were reading, I mean, it was a lot of police brutality. I mean, they were trying to hold a line, and they were using hoses, they used tear gas, and they were using batons and riot shields to block people. And it was really tough. It's very tough. And, I mean, they have different regulations in the foreign countries. from America, so it's kind of different to understand. I mean, going on right now, I don't want to bring in current events, but for the time being, there's a thing happening over in I think Russia, and they're having differences in opinion, and they're really pushing off on these people who are protesting, and it's kind of like that. It's a shocker because we live in a world where we're trying to hopefully live our day to day and not try and see these things, but it's kind of opening up our eyes to what's can and what happens out there sometimes. So moving on, now I'm gonna get to Mala in a second, but one of the really important supporting characters that has come up is Yasmin. She is, as you see, we have those arrows going back and forth between the Webleys and Mala. But Yasmin was the former lieutenant of Mala for her army. She helped keep people in line. But she's just been having such really bad conflicts with Mala. And Mala, that arrow pointing to Yasmin, that conflict with her is like, don't get in my way. If you're going to cause trouble, just leave right now. You're not my sister anymore. And it really hurt Yasmin and put her in a bad place. With Yasmin, we have a different set of assorted characters that she's in tuned with. We have Ashok. Susant is this young boy who is in Mala's army, but he's trying to join the Webleys, but he doesn't know how about going. He doesn't know how about to do that. He doesn't know if he wants to just stop what he's doing and work for them, and because it's less pay. I mean, he's getting a decent amount of money for working in Mala's army. So he's at a crossroads right now. Miss Dada, or in the other versions, is Miss Dugier, and she owns the internet cafe where Mala and Yasmin were first working in, but due to a conflict with Mala and her nephew, they stopped going there. And then Yasmin also had that talk with the other union leaders in India. He had people from the textile, from the silk, from the factory workers, from the plastic waste. They all came together because Ashok formed a meeting, and because Ashok couldn't get in contact with Big Sister No, Big Sister No said to contact Yasmin, and which she did. He picked her up, and they went into this kind of like retired Bollywood set. So they're talking about how it was a studio, how they went into this really nice trailer, and they had the union leaders there. And it was a really interesting conversation that they were having, because the union leaders were these fairly old people. I mean, they must have been at least over 40 years old, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And
well,
like,
I mean, I think Blue. You could even go with the stereotype of the kind of the union leaders here in the U.S. Kind of like these old crusty guys who started on the shop floor and worked their way up and kind of went ahead and did everything. So they work their way up. They put in their time, they put in their effort. So I think it's a real contrast to just these very young workers who again that are having problems with wages and everything else that's going on with them.
Yeah, I think that that sub story of the generational thing was kind of a cool thing. And if you, again, as an educator, if you were doing this with kids, I think that would be kind of a cool thing, because these children have a solution, or at least a piece of a solution, or a strategy for a solution, and the senior leaders of this economic disastrous place are not willing to listen to it. So that sub story is kind of interesting.
And we're getting some comments on the side, and I should tell you something about it. All of us are very used to watching something and making back channel comments. So I'm going to ask some people who've been typing the whole time everybody's been talking to go ahead and say some of their comments. Anybody want to?
I was going to mention, you run into the thing that I saw with the union leaders from India is the fact that they're all quite old. So their knowledge of the internet and what goes on with gaming and what goes on with the global connectedness of just people was just beyond their realm of comprehension. But then once they kind of got a grasp on that, I sensed the biggest emotion that took over for them was fear. Because they immediately said, well, why would we want to do something like this? Because then all those people would come get our jobs. Because all they saw was money leaving their hands. They didn't see the opportunity to try to bring people together, to help, to where everyone could do better. They only saw it as, well, this is going to hurt me, even though they didn't completely comprehend and understand, plus the fact they had a 14-year-old girl talking to them, and they were, they didn't even know what to think of her. And Ashok, he looked like I got the impression he may have been about 20, 22. So even maybe 25. But they were still very young. And in a country and in that culture, generally speaking, with age comes an earned kind of respect, and they take you seriously. And so it was kind of like he sat there reading that going, this is doomed, 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 doomed. And so that was one thing I saw.
Well, in that same scene, in that same moment too, it takes me back into the experiment that Connor was a part of in grad school, where he had the group of people who start off friendly enough, right? And then suddenly there's this dynamic of scarcity introduced, right? In the form of, oh, I'm going to miss out on this opportunity, and it's, time's running out, so that's becoming scarce, and my opportunity to get more out of the situation's running out. And what I hear and what Trish had just said is that same dynamic taking hold, right? So instead of thinking more broadly about, well, what are our broader interests and what can we do together, it suddenly became, okay, well, how I feel like I'm about to lose mine. And so that scarcity becomes introduced again. And again, predictably, it starts to tear them apart, right? Everyone's kind of covering theirs. And it undermines that dynamic of sort of that unity, or the willingness to even think beyond sort of their own little parochial interests. And I think that's, we were talking too about Yasmin and her break with Mala. But that's just kind of something that Yasmin's doing with a lot of the characters, including the young boy. I can't remember his name. Susan. When she talks to him, and she's basically pointing out, like, yes, the Army's doing really well. You're doing really well by being a part of the Army. Mala's doing pretty well by being a part of the Army. But this good fortune that you have now is based on beating down and keeping back other poor kids like us elsewhere. And essentially, that's how I took Mala's response is, well, that's just the way of the world, and if I don't do it, someone else will. And he basically says the same thing too. It's like, well, what can I do, right? I'm just one person, and so if it isn't me, then someone else would. And so it kind of, again, this sort of justification based on this scarcity, and like, oh, I don't want to give up the good thing I've got going, even though it does probably bother me that my good fortune is based on the misery of other people.
It just struck me is that I think one thing that Dr. O is really showing us is that for good or bad, it doesn't matter how young you are, you can have an impact in your immediate world and in the global world around you, that age is not the factor any longer.
And I'm just going to jump in because I think there's a couple points. One, Dr. Rao, obviously, he's not reporting something factual. And labor unions are really built on power. And who control and who has the power. And most, labor unions are built on the workers, banding together so that they can have some power for themselves. So even though that that there's the reaction from the elders about, like, oh, no, we're going to compete with them. Power in unions really come from people banding together and deciding that as a group they won't do things. So I mean, he's kind of using this, but I do want to say that kind of reluctance in unions, that's not how unions negotiate. They have to negotiate based on numbers and helping each other and supporting each other when it comes to strikes. So even though that's showing up, if they're going to be successful, that has to change. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was about how you can be anywhere, anytime, and you can be involved. Yeah, that's a concept that I think he's introducing and needs to be discussed more, because that's something they're not getting. And I know those of us who are, do online learning, virtual communities, and something like that, we understand that you can connect to just about anyone, anywhere, anytime. And that's not novel for us, but for these union leaders, I mean, this is this is a concept beyond them. It's not that you have to physically go to the place to meet with the union leader. You all meet online and you do things online together. This is a concept that's really beyond a lot of them.
Well, and just to that point, in your earlier one too, I think what Dr. is also introducing here is this kind of even within unions as organizations of people, right? Not the individuals themselves, but as organizations, that they're bumping up again against this changing reality, right? And he's kind of pointing out that there is at this point, as this transition is happening, this learning curve that unions as institutions are hitting, and that they have to rethink their scope of who they are. So he's in these elders for the union, these union leaders. I think he's introducing sort of this conflict of, okay, well, what are our interests? Up until this point, our interests are, well, our garment workers here, right, in India or in this state, or and they're not really yet thinking on this broader sort of global scale, which is what I think is being kind of presented to them. It's like, look, here's this opportunity to really tackle this root issue in the biggest area of battle, whatever your metaphor is, battlefield or space. Here's an opportunity for us to tackle this at the root everywhere, so that there's nowhere that that this conflict can get moved without our presence, without our input, right? And they're still, they're not quite sure they haven't made that transition yet.
Yeah.
Into seeing that as a reality.
And that's I'm just putting on Chris's screen real quickly, because it's so easy for Mala and the rest and the rest of our protagonists. It's easy for them to get unions because they belong to guilds. And and they're used to working, they're used to, and Chris is showing a very low level one, but they're used to working with people and negotiating and having distributed leadership and people playing their roles and making a difference and stuff like that. They're very used to that. You need to organize to accomplish things, which is something not a lot of people going in the workforce are ready for.
Well, but I say a lot of people going into the workforce are still, despite a lot of the talk these days in businesses about collaboration and teams, a lot of people aren't prepared that way. You're prepared to be an individual, sitting and doing your individual work, right? And so you're not. I don't think, by and large, we're through our system of schooling, that part of schooling that's about getting you prepared for the workplace. By and large, traditionally, it's been about getting you ready to do your job on the line, and you just learn enough to follow the instructions and do what you're told, and get it done productively. And so I think that's still that's another thing that I think is an interesting dynamic. This kind of contrast between guilds and unions and what they can be. And also, I think Dr. Al is pointing out, especially for Yasmin, he talks about the feelings that come out for her, right? when she becomes involved and she sees the struggles of people, that she's really engaged at a very deep and emotional level, like down to her core, moves her, right? And that's very, very different than the experience that she has before she becomes involved in this, as just one more poor working girl in the factory.
Mm-hmm.
All right then.
So, Blue, we totally interrupted you and threw you
Oh,
off
that's
track.
Well, I think I was smoking a tangent, but I'm glad you guys brought that up about the. That was a. I mean, like I'm not overly familiar with unions and how they work, but I suspect yeah, they would need meetings. But I mean, they in the book they were saying how Ashok and Big Sister No were just trying to get with them, and he was saying this meeting wasn't supposed to happen for another few months, but because the urgency of the the main leaders, Just Bob, Mighty Krang, and Big Sister No being pretty much beat down and captured, he needed help, and he didn't know how to turn to other than the union leaders. But as we find out, the union leaders are like, that's nice. We still don't understand what you guys are doing, but we know that we don't want to be a part of it. Have fun with what you're doing. And they kind of walk out and they leave them there. And both Yasmin and Ashok are just flabbergasted, is the best way I can describe it, as they're trying to walk through what their next game plan is. And then,
I would say that, yes, the union leaders don't get it. And as far as meetings are how can I say this, the foundation of unions. In fact, that when people are trying to start unions, and a lot of the times, the history of this is that unions, even the talk of having a union or the meeting for a union can cause people to get fired. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the history of unions. So any kind of meeting has a lot of importance put into it.
Yeah. So I did think that was kind of significant, and they will Ashok is another he's a graduate from college on the financial economic scale as well, but not super brilliant as our genius Connor over there.
Yeah, I believe he has his master's. I believe they were saying Oxford, but no, it doesn't seem like he's doing. It doesn't seem like he's doing the kind of applied economics that Connor is.
Probably not, but they're going back and forth with each other, and she's actually helping him realize a couple of things. Well, he's teaching her a few things, but I think they come up with the game plan. And it's something involved with doing what they do, which is walking in games and organizing. Because the Webleys, as a group as a whole, the IWWWW, won't hold if they don't have a management in place. So while Big Sister No, Just Bob, and the Mighty Krang are trying to get themselves back together, they're going to try and hold the glue together, which I think is a huge job for them. Because they've never done that before, especially Yasmin. Yasmin has been the lieutenant, but she hasn't been a leader. I know when we're talking about how we were saying guilds, well, kind of like unions, you have certain people that are the leaders and the bosses. And I know that with Weidong, Yasmin, they will follow suit because they're already guildmates. Matthew, even though he's a guild leader, I think he's more like, I need help and I'm willing to help. And I don't know how to organize everything, so I mean, I know he's willing to follow. But Mala is so strong-headed. I don't know if she'd let anyone lead her around anywhere. But we'll see, because I know that she's getting confrontational at this point. But let's get to Mala. Mala has arrows pointing everywhere. So Mala's the magenta in the middle on the bottom. And Mala's main characters are with her is her army, her family. Mr. Banerjee is the person who is giving her the money and is employing her, but he's obviously some puppet commander that is being directed. I can only suspect who is directing him, but I'll leave that for the predictions later. And then Miss Doda's nephew that Mala totally beat up, and the nephew is totally embarrassed to say that he got beat up by a girl. But So going to the arrows. So working with Mala and Yasmin. So they were sisters. They were working together in that guild. But Yasmin is trying to still help Mala, trying to help her see like the Webleys really are doing the right thing, and we need to join them. And Mala's still trying to have no part of it. She's likes having her money. I mean, she's not super greedy, but I mean, and I think she's still being held over her head that they had
Yeah.
to pay off
Yeah.
Mr. and the nephew.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
she's
because-
just incurring debt over and over.
Yeah, because that really, really struck me at the beginning when I started reading this section for this week, was that Mala had tried to stand up for herself. And yeah, she probably shouldn't have stayed as long as she did talking to Big Sister Nora, but it happened. And so here is this hulking, what is that stuff, that like chewing tobacco breathing guy. He's chasing her down, and so yeah, she sort of just beat the snot out of him. And so the next day, instead of people saying, good for you, you stood up for him, Mr. Banerjee says, okay, well, to pay them off and keep you out of trouble, you're going to have to, I'm going to have to take 2 months' salary and pay off Mrs. Dada, and you're going to have to pay that back to me, because if you don't, well, she was going to get in trouble, and she would just lose everything. And she knew that her mother was depending on her pay, her brother was depending on her pay, and so now she has been taken from a place of power where she stood up for herself and immediately muzzled and put on a very short leash. And so here she is, she's trapped. She is literally trapped because she cannot budge from that position or lose everything. And in this position, it's not just her losing stuff, it's her family. So she's in that position, and Yasmin started talking to Big Sister Nora, and Yasmin's all for that, but Yasmin doesn't know about her beating up the nephew and doesn't know about how Mr. Banerjee is holding this over her head. So all Yasmin sees is her being greedy, but Mala, in her anger and frustration at being trapped like she is, she's sort of striking back at Yasmin. And so it just goes to show, when people act the way they do, sometimes they're acting that way because of where they are in their life. And so I just had to throw that in.
Right. But, I mean, I suspect Mala did tell Yasmin that she was the one that beat up the nephew, but as far as the transaction between Mr. Banerjee and having to pay, she probably didn't say that. I mean, that's in between the lines. And I know the army is like, yeah, we totally know what happened.
Yeah, and that was like a personal behind-the-scenes deal between her. Well, you don't have to talk about what happened, but here's the deal. I'll give you a pay packet, right, so you can pay your army. We'll sort of keep this under the rug. But in that moment, what I saw is that, if she had some room to move before and escape or get out from under him, in that moment when she accepted the pay packet, she closed the door in her cage. At that moment, now she's become dependent. Now she realizes that she feels that she's completely dependent upon him now to hold on to everything that she doesn't want to let go of it. Like Trish was saying too, that these things, if it falls apart, doesn't affect her, just affect her. It affects her army and as well as her family. So now she's well and locked in.
And going back to the chart, the reason why I don't have a conjoining arrow like I do with Wei Dong and Matthew, like Wei Dong and Matthew are the only people with a real working relationship out of the characters I have listed currently. So Mala to the Webleys, Mala has been pushing the Webleys away. She's like, I'm sorry, I don't want to deal with this, just leave me alone. Webleys are like, please, we need you, we could really use your help, you have a lot of authority, we could help. And there is just so much going back and forth, but nothing's really connecting the way we need it to. And we have Connor in the brown circle all the way to the far left. So he's representing Coca-Cola Games. And we have introduced to this inner circle of professional technology, internet, observing people, and they're just all about, we're observing the games, we watch what's happening, we're like the major administrators slash GMs. And so it's between these three of Caden, Fairfax, and Bill. Fairfax and Bill are like government hacker type people, and Caden is like a psychology major that was like, I can predict people's behavior and I can do that sort of thing. And they're all up on their high horses slash high statues. Yeah, game overloads is a good term, Trish. So Connor just, even though Connor's real interaction is with trying to control the Webleys and their movements, or at least trying to predict them, when I said I suspect Mr. Banerjee is the puppet, I believe Connor's company, or not company, but he practically controls it, the Coca-Cola Games is paying Mr. Banerjee to pay people to take care of the Webleys, which is a vicious cycle of going back and forth. You can imagine. But I mean, like, I would be interested to see if Coca-Cola actually came up with a MMO type game. That would be very interesting. But that brings me up to the segue of the next slide, where I have, these are the games that have been mentioned through the story so far. We talked about Time Helm Warriors. Yeah, well, Kono thinks he can predict the market. When he tries and predict people, he really can't. He's awful at it. Time Warriors is a traditional MMORPG that has quests, dungeons, and loot, with a arcing quest line, and, you know, a vibrant world with like a lush story type setting. And it has Vikings, orcs, and other races. We have Savage Wonderland, that is with Wei Dong and Matthew's Guild, is with this endgame MMORPG. It's all about the Nexus, the endgame, and the raiding. It has some Alice in Wonderland theme. Multi-class system that enables party dynamics, like you have to have a healer, you have to have people who are doing damage, and you have to have a tank to help absorb damage with that functionality. We have that in the terminology. We have that in WoW. The next one is Zombie Mecha. This is the one that Mala's in. She does PvP Mech Combat Arena, FPS, first-person shooter. It has a leaderboard so people can see who's the top of the servers. Mala is all the way up there with Robot Rala. Plus, we got zombie mobs. Apparently that adds a different dynamic from other different zombie-type games. And they have large-scale battles. So lots of people can be within this big, large field, and they could be fighting each other, because it's all PvP, player versus player. So the new three that we have, Mushroom Kingdom, obviously Super Mario Brothers themed, but it's one of those cookie-cutter MMOs where it's very standard. Like, you have quests, you have somewhat of a story, and then you have some kind of class system that people can fight each other. It's not overly dynamic, it's not anything new, it's just adapted to help feed the masses of people who like Super Smash Brothers. I mean, Super Mario Brothers, blah, blah, blah. PvP, PvE, it has a world boss probably Browser is one of them. I think you can play as Browser. At one point, they were talking about how they had a bunch of peaches that were flying Koopas everywhere. It was a very interesting fight trying to imagine this happening. So it's not like a dynamic class system. They have set classes, and you could only play these classes, and you can't really customize them or anything, but it depends on how your expertise of playing. So, like I said, basic class systems. And the Mushroom Kingdom is where they had this really big fight for the Webleys. They were all talking about it. And how they were all fighting and doing all across different realms and worlds. And it was trying to coordinate everything with Mighty Krang being the translator. We had Just Bob helping organizing and strategizing, and we had Big Sister Noel being at the forefront and being, let's go, do this, awesome commander she is. Then we have Mad Max Auto Duel. This is a game that Yasmin picked up because she's afraid to go into the other worlds that Mala's in, because she doesn't want to get confronted. She doesn't want to have to deal with or like get she doesn't want to cause any more friction between the relationship. So she's like, I'll try something new. One of the games she's playing is Mad Max Auto Duel. And it's a PvP battle call arena type game, where it obviously has a racing aspect, but I mean it's my Maserati that can have rocket launchers and machine guns on it apparently, and I can battle people as I'm racing. There's a leaderboard depending upon how often you win in first place, what kind of points and scoring system you have, and they were talking about the diverse and different custom rides, how you could have a Land Rover or all-terrain vehicle, or you could be in an ATV. Yasmin prefers to be on a kind of motorcycle type thing that can go fast and that can still shoot off and scope things out. She refers to herself as a scout as she's rearranging how to direct her army of gold farmers from the Webleys. And with that, it's the visual elite status of, I have a really cool paint job, I have a really cool badge, you don't have it but I do type deal. And then this last section is an interesting one because it's not one of those like hardcore MMORPGs. It's it's Civilization or Theater of War 7. This was also a game that Yasmin picked up, but it was also mentioned by Big Sister No, and how this is how she really got into gaming. Theater of War was her like, oh, I can play this. This is a game that got her started, and she was talking about it all kind of her origin story. How she was, oh yes, I'm reminded to say that the official soft drink of inevitable betrayal is Cheerwine. In any case, it's this world contrast. If you played something like Age of Empires or Age of Civilization, it talks about it's this really massive online world where people own different parts of the world, and you can build your armies, build up your civilization, and you're able to try and control other empires you attack, and you simulate wars. And it is really exciting. It depends on who's playing, but I mean, it's not only are you against different players, you're against the environment because they have little like monster camps, they have little artifacts that you have to go find. And it really does have a very advanced ranking system because it ranks your armies, it ranks your research and development, it ranks how big is your military. Not so much, not for the MMO versions, Trish Cloud asked if there was strategy tone-based, and not for the World Conquest MMORPGs, it's really real-time, and that's how you have to play it. If you're doing like a solo mode, maybe it can be because you go by year. Especially with Age of Civilization, it's by year, and you play against a computer. But they have an online version where it's all real time. And yes, it is like StarCraft. Well, instead of taking over bits of the silver world, you're taking over galaxies and universes and starships, and massive battles like that. I believe Eve is something of that nature as well. And it borderlines a simulation, because if you are currently in Iron Age and you have weapons of spears and you have armor and you're fighting people that that are still in the Stone Age and they just have flint spears and maybe bow and arrows, I'm pretty sure the people with the iron are going to win. So it's simulating how the different ages and how modes of conquest differed for different people. Whether if you're just creating your own people, or you're simulating the Romans, or simulating the Nomads. It all varies depending upon what you choose to do, and what you choose to upgrade. And it can be very casual free play, where you're playing and you can just log off at any time. You're not based on quests. You're just building up your resources. You're building up your land, you're farming, you're taking care of your people. And I mean, you can log off at any time. So I just wanted to review about the different games that are out there. And I mean, this really does cover a huge spoke, except, I mean, yeah, we do need some space type stuff. So hopefully we'll get into that. Maybe that'll be one of the new games next time. Maybe Jerry. Jerry's commenting that if I'm in the Stone Age and I can bring mammoths, will I win? Maybe. We'll see. So, if we're going to go and move on to the next slide, or if anyone wants to talk about the games, or if they're ready to move on. Nope. Okay. So, the reason why I have a very special slide for these two, Lou, or as he wants to call himself as Tank, and G, or Giandy on her radio show. This is a very unique experience because this is right after when Lou was talking with Leonard, and he was saying, "I'm trying to get away from the police right now. I need to find some place. If you can't help me,
Yeah,
you're
that
not
was
helping
great.
me." And I mean, Leonard was kind of crushed. He was like, "Oh, well, I'll see what I can do. I'll call other people, and I'll see what I can do." But Lou is still like, I pretty much got beat up. I'm bleeding somewhere. I'm sure my face is swollen somewhere. And he's just at this train station trying to immerse himself into the crowd so people can't find him. But he is found by none other than G, or Giandy. And she's this very sprightly, enthusiastic, and energetic person. And she found him and she was drawn to him. And she talks very excitedly, very openly. You don't want to know, Chris. And she's, how can I even describe her? She's just this very charismatic entity that she owns a radio show, and she speaks to over a million people on the Western Sea, or the West River, I think she says, and everybody listens to her, and she wants to have
Yeah.
her story. He wants to have Lou on the show.
And let Grid interject what she just said.
Oh, please, yes, Grid, come on.
I think she's just another strong chick, and that's what I love about this book is how females are depicted. You know, they're not wimpy little, trying to impress the boys. They're tough and on their own, can stand their own. Clearly, with Mala beating up that thug, and then with this one, in a different way, a strong chick. But Mala, they're all feisty, and I think that's the modern chick.
Well, the other thing that I like is that even though her character is strong, they do discuss about how her radio show really goes out to a lot of young women who aren't strong and who are in the factories and facing problems, and that it's not that everyone's a brave heroine. I mean, this this is a radio Dear Abby who talks to young women who are being exploited in the factories.
Yeah, and she's pretty upfront with them too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. She's very straightforward and gets.
And we've gotten some more comments, so I'd ask for those people to get on mic too.
Oh my, please, everyone, come on.
Well, the thing that Grid made me think of is we hear about so much how there are not enough women in the profession of IT or game developing or that kind of thing, but these girls are girl gamers. They are really good girl gamers. Or Giandy here, who is a whiz at what she does, dodging all those proxies and getting through firewalls and dodging here and dodging there to do her pirate radio broadcast. So she's very technologically savvy. So all these girls are presented in a way that people are really striving to get girls more in this way, with having girls that get on out there and code, and girls who are gamers who can get out there and play with the boys. And it doesn't matter what the game is, because a girl can play the game as well as a boy. And that takes me back to not too long ago, where a country was dividing up their video game contest, and they had a girls category and a boys category, and everybody's like, why should there be any category? It's a video game. And so this is one way of showing that girls can game just as good as the boys.
And I like how Grid was saying how she's a better female role model, but I mean, she's the strong girl. She's not like, oh, I'm a princess and I need to be saved. No, she's ready to take on stuff. She's ready. She's very knowledgeable and she's ready to walk in the field type deal. But I mean, like, we have these very interesting female leads, We have Mala. She's leader of an army and she beats down guys. Bluntly. We have Big Sis Noor. She's this very strong female lead, but she's like unifying and she's like a very motherly type figure, but she's like, if you mess with my people, I'm gonna mess with you. And then we have Gianti. She's a different kind of strong female lead who's pretty, who is like, I'm smart, but I like to dodge. She's dodging the government in a different sort of way, but she's all about still doing her radio show. If she was on the run from the government or the military, you think she'd try and leave the country, or you think she'd try and stop her show so she could catch her breath. But no, she keeps doing her show because she knows that she's helping people. And I mean, that's really boiling down to Gianti's character, is that she too wants to help people. And when she saw Lou, she was like, oh my god, it's that guy from the video. And Lou is in many of the videos that the Webleys put out about the gold farm was being attacked by the police and the government when they were trying to stop walking. And she needs to have him on the show. I mean, she doesn't bring him on right away. I mean, they get home, she cleans him up, she gives him some food, and then they're all on the radio show. But Gianti's taking some calls first. She's talking with people who are in need of help, who want someone to talk to. And so she keeps saying, oh, I have this guy with me, you're going to have to stick on, come on. It's almost like she's trying to use him as like some kind of like ploy to keep people on the air, but at the same time she knows that she needs to keep him. She's like the dead ringer, her best bet to have people. But I mean, she's already a very popular show. But in any case, once he comes on, he really puts out his heart. He doesn't know what has gotten over him. But as he's listening to Gianti talk, it's like you want to tell her whole thing. You want to tell her what your problems are, because she has that kind of mentality or that kind of voice that's welcoming, and he likes that. He often refers to how he wants his mother, because he's alone, he's scared, and he's frightened, but he wants some comfort. And the fact that Gianti comes in and gives him that, I mean, it's really nice to have that. Granted, they're still on the run from the government, mind you. But in this crucial time, I think, Gianti did. So someone was saying, Trish was saying how Lou was turned into a hero. And I mean, he was already a hero, but making it more acceptable to the public, trying to really boost up the actions of what he did, is really intense. When we were doing Lou's backstory, he was working as a security guard at a factory, and one day they just shut the factory without letting anybody know, and he climbed over the fence, this barbed fence, and he unlocked everything and he let everybody in so they could at least grab their things from their lockers. And when Gianti's doing her radio show, she has a bunch of forums and different places where people would post things about her show. And one of the comments was, oh yes, oh I remember him. He was this brave man that leaped over the gates and opened them for us, and they glorified him. They were comparing him to some jungle creature. I'm not quite sure of that, but they were saying how amazing he was. And I mean, it was just boosting his status and just saying how, yeah, he became an urban legend. Very good point, Trish. But it was, I think, with the end of it, they try and get some sleep, but they hear sirens. And both of them are immediately up in arms, and it's the police. They found them. So Gianti is like, grab your stuff, let's go. And she's putting gasoline everywhere. She takes her hard drive out, she puts it in her jacket, and she tosses her lighter in like a complete, I can't say that on camera, and they go down the elevator, and the building is set afire, and they're able to escape through the escaping crowd of people. Yeah, very like Mission Impossible, Chris. And it's amazing. I have to tell you, it was like a part of an action movie, just trying to picture how that was happening. I had very epic music for this scene that was happening. And so they're on the run again, but they're probably going to go to one of her safe houses, safe locations where she does her radio show. She says that she gets lots of donations and she does ads for different people, so she has money, so she's able to have different locations. And yes, Jerry, very like Jason Bourne, but it gives you something to think about with these two characters and what they will think. I do. I try and have music when I read. I try and have music going on. So,
And if anybody's wondering, Blue just got a comment that said Blue thinks in soundtracks, and that's what he's commenting to.
I think we spent enough time on the characters. So moving on to narrative and looking about that, and we're talking about trials and tribulations. So narrative study, we're looking at the story elements. So this is our narrative 101. I know I had you guys watch a clip, a very short clip on what narrative was and what the narrative structure. I'm just going to re-emphasize a little bit.
Oh,
and then
I was
try
going
and
to
shift
say,
gears.
this ties in really well with what Sherry was talking to us about on Tuesday, about, what's the narrative, what's narratology, looking at games in a narrative. This ties in really well with it.
This is the other coin.
Other side of the coin?
Yeah. So, if you guys were watching Sherry last Tuesday, she was talking about narratology and ludology, and that's taking like the fundamentals of what narrative is and turning into like scientific fact and applying it to other things other than stories. I know when I speak narrative, I speak in a very literal, in a literary sense of how do I play to stories, plot, and characters. So it's the other side of the coin, because there are different ways to look at it.
So you're saying traditional.
Sure.
You're talking very traditional here.
Yes, very much about the storytelling. So when we're talking about narrative structure, the main pieces of narrating are your characters, your plot, your setting, your theme, your style, which is how you write, like what kind of different literary tools you're using, the form, whether it's a story, whether it's a poem, whether it's a play, your type of narration and your tense. Wow.
Real world calling.
No. Real world can wait. So it's all these pieces that are coming to build the character, build the story and the characters together. This particular story, For the Win by Cory Doctorow, is a very equal balance of character-driven and plot-driven elements that help create a very flowing story. Because I would have to say that this is a third-person omniscient. That's third-person omniscient, meaning that it's being told from the perspective of an omniscient presence, of like some kind of invisible person or god that is watching over the story and telling what people are doing, while at the same time it's also getting in their thoughts and feelings, because we get a lot of that from the characters, from the main characters, about how they're feeling about certain things, how they're like, oh, I'm not sure if this is the right thing I should be doing. And it's those kind of things that help point us in the direction that makes things easier to understand. And in this particular slide in the lower right hand, I have a circle. This circle is called is for explaining characters. So we have major, minor, round, and flat. That's to help describe characters. And we have a lot of major characters that are very round, meaning that they are dynamic and that they change. They aren't very stagnant. They are changing their emotions. Their conclusions that they were going to from page 1 to where they are now is going to be much different, because they see the world differently, they have experienced things differently, and this changes them. This makes them very real characters in that sense. When we're talking about the gold farmers, the people who are just randomly attacking, when we're talking about unnamed army of Mala, they are the minor flat characters. They're that other extreme where they're pretty much just agents. They're soldiers. They're expendable pawns. So if you don't have a name and you don't have more than a few paragraphs of monologue, you're not important. That's just how it is when we're talking about stories. So jumping up to the next slide. This is our awesome plot line. This is explaining the regular flow of the story. So we have the beginning, the orientation. This is how is everything brought together? This is the first week reading when we were just reading those 4 chapters. It was setting the tone, it was establishing the place and the atmosphere, and it was letting us know like these are the main characters that we're looking at. So next is the complication, or it's also called the rising action, and this is where things are happening, things are developing. We have the Webleys are coming in, we have people getting beat up, people setting buildings on fire. Lots of things are going on, and I mean that's when you know that the story is really getting ingrained and it's dealing with the energy, but I'll get to energy later. Next you have your climax. We haven't gotten there yet, or at least I don't think we have. Maybe with one of the characters I think we've reached a point with her, but the climax is where this is the topmost energy. This is where everything is happening, everything is leading up to this point. Resolution or falling action. This is people are starting to slow down. Things are being processed. We're getting to the good ending. We know that we're reaching a conclusion. Coda, the conclusion where we're like, okay, we've finally finished the story. We're at a good place. And this is the very traditional narrative structure. But imagine that we have to take this plot line and we have to apply it to the main character. So apply it to Matthew, apply it to Wei Dong, apply it to Mala, and apply it to the Webleys as well. And you can see the action lines are much different. We'll get to that, I promise. So moving on to conflicts. Conflicts are what drives the story, what brings the rising action. And you know what? Sometimes conflicts are already in place when a story starts. So it's not something that happens. Conflicts are always happening, but it's depending upon where we're putting the emphasis and how we're building the story. So we have the very main 3 conflicts. Man versus man, where it's just me versus some other person, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or technologically. It's me versus another one individual. Then we have man versus nature. This is man versus the elements, probably raging. If I'm trying to sail a boat in the sea, I'm competing against the sea because the sea can topple my boat and kill me. So man versus nature. Man versus self. This is very much the internal conflict. This is where, say I had someone die in my life and I am torn with grief and I can't continue going on. I'm at war with myself on how I should be feeling. Like I have to get on with my life, but I can't without her. She was where I needed her to be. And it's that internal fight that you have, that struggle. Yes. Good Jumper just said Mala has this type of conflict. Yes, she's at war with herself. She doesn't know what to do. She knows that she needs to still be making money, but she knows that she should be doing the right thing, but it's the conflict of herself. So the 4 star ones that are coming up next, the 4 star bullets, these are extra, but I think they do make appearances definitely in the book. Man versus society. This is the part where Mala was beating up the nephew, and then when she came home, she was frowned upon. She was, how could you do that? You're a woman. You're not supposed to hit a man type deal. That Eve teasing thing. Man versus machine. Versus internet connectivity and lag, definitely on when you're playing World of Warcraft. You have to have a nice internet connection to be playing these MMOs. Or if you want to be the more literal sense, I guess Terminator, where it's Mr. Connor versus these robots who want to kill him. Next up we got Man versus Fate. Fate is this wonderful glimpse of destiny where it tells you this is what you have to do, and if you don't do it, you're probably going to die miserably and horribly. Or you won't end up in some nice place, that's for sure. And then you have Man versus the unknown. This is man versus forces that are beyond his control. That is not nature. That could be possibly God, some type of God or demigod. You got supernatural forces like ghosts. Also, this is man versus fear as well, where in the unknown, fear of the unknown, where your fears take on a manifestation of their own. Kind of like how the Shah are in World of Warcraft. They are manifestations of these powerful negative emotions that have physical and real complications that can really hurt you. So, these are the driving forces of this book. How are we applying conflicts to what's going on? So if you go to the next slide, it says go to Google Draw and Hangout. So I'm gonna do a little interactivity. Hopefully I can get it working. So if you'll jump to my screen, come on.
We're on you, and we can see you.
Can you see the Google Drive document that I brought up?
No.
Alrighty. Let's see. I'll just screen share.
And it's okay because right now we have a distraction. It seems that there's an epic piece that Trish can get if she goes in game, just like in these next few seconds, and grabs it just in time from a retro raid that was done last night. So while you're pulling that up, the rest of the guild is trying to get Trish online so she doesn't miss this epic piece.
So, but no, I have it up on my screen.
Okay, Blue, we'll go back to your screen.
Do you see now? I'm sharing the Google Hangout screen.
Yes.
So this is a conflict energy map. So when I was talking about energy, this is directing how the conflicts are affecting the characters. And like I said, it's for each character you would do it. And because the way the chapters are set up, we're getting like segments of them, like each couple of chapters. We're continuing that story. So for instance, no. Let's see, can I change the color? So let's say, well.
So what are you drawing first?
I'm showing the conflict energy line, and so I think, let's see, who should I do? Do you want me to do Mala, Matthew, or Wei Dong?
Mala.
Okay, so let's start with Mala. So Mala was she was actually at a pretty high point in her life. She was working, she was making good money, and she was with her friends, and nothing bad was really happening. So that's our baseline right there. That's showing us like a moderate form of I'm at a good place, I'm content. So we're going to start her off pretty high in her story because she was doing pretty high. So let's say, she met Mr. Banerjee and he offered her to give her money. That puts her in a better state. So she's been doing that for quite some time. She says it's been like that for a few months, a few weeks, a month or two. And so we're going to keep her up at a pretty good high. She's been at the computer a lot. But then we get the talk with the Webleys, and she doesn't know what to actually do with that. It brings her down a bit. She's like, I'm good. Thanks, big sister, no, but I'll be fine. Because when the Webleys were first talking with her, she got beat up. The Webleys only totally took her down, and she was like, how could you? I've never really lost before type deal. So that was an ego stroke. So then right after that talk, she was in conflict with the nephew, and she was being chased. And she was scared for her life, and she hid in an alley. So we're going to put her down really quickly. See how close these lines are? So even though she's still being frightened, she's like, no, I shouldn't be fighting. I'm Robot Walla. I am strong. And so we're going to put her up now where she's feeling empowered. This is the best she's ever been for the time being. She's taking out all of her anger and frustration on this stalker person, which is, good for her. But when we get home, she starts worrying, and she gets that call from Mr. Banerjee, and now she has to pay stuff, and that puts her in a very bad place. So she's being stuck there for quite some time. Yeah. Jerry was saying how Mala was achieving her dream of playing the game for a living, but the experience isn't what she expected, not the life experience you're supposed to find when you achieve a dream. Thank you, Jerry. That was a good quote. So she's moderately just trying to get by, trying to pay off her debt because Mr. Banerjee is taking money away to try and do hush money for Miss Dota and the nephew because of her actions. So, consequences. She's feeling really bad. But then Yasmin tries to talk to her in the next chapter we're getting at. And this is where Yasmin and Mala separate. And it creates a rift with her because of the whole Webley situation. Yasmin wants to help the Webleys, but Mala does not want to do anything. She wants to continue walking because she has to, and she's definitely being held. So this is putting her in a very low spot. And this would probably be near her lowest, but when we get back to Mala's story, she has to be fighting Yasmin. When Yasmin comes back from the meeting with the union members, she's waiting at the house. Her army is ready to pounce and attack Yasmin and Ashok on the bike. And the fact that she has to do this, Yasmin is relatively prepared to fight. She has this very long staff type walking stick that she uses to rappel. But when Mala jumps on her, she pushes her back and twists her leg, and it's very gruesome. And she feels this is something that Mr. Bandry probably asked her to do, and she's being put up to do this, and she just feels very low. And this is where we're currently at right now with these characters. So as you can see, this is a conflict energy line with how our current story is looking. I'm going to change with Mala. And it's looking at how these events, how these conflicts, how she's trying to survive these trials. Trials and tribulations is the conflicts that are happening. At the beginning, man versus man again, then back up here, man versus society, man versus man again, man versus man, and then man versus self, man versus man again. And you can just see where lots of this is coming at. Oh yes, Chris. So I just wanted to get that. I don't want to do this for all the characters, but I mean, if you want to, that would be cool. But I'm just going to leave this up there. I'm going to take a picture of it so I can have this in the Google the PowerPoint that we're doing. But if we could, it's up for the economics portion. So I hope you guys enjoyed that.
and I take a screenshot, put it up in our Flickr site too. It's totally fine.
Okay. So your turn.
Oh, okay. then we'll get going.
All right, so next up is everybody stop. It's meta time.
Okay, and I'm just gonna, and this is just a pause. You get the narrative, then we're gonna have this little pause, and then we'll get into the virtual economics. Well, one thing I wanted to mention, and also it's really great that Cam just brought up a new graphic novel that's done by the same author in real life, right, Cam?
Yes, I was looking at upcoming books this fall, and I was just kind of browsing through covers, and then I saw, oh, this one's by Cory Doctorow. And when I looked at the description, it sounds like it's a girl in the United States who is playing an online game and befriends, I think, a girl in China, and who is involved in gold farming. And so their friendship sounds like it's going to explore a lot of the same themes and ideas that we've been talking about in this book. It sounds really good.
Okay, and the reason I'm bringing it up, if anybody isn't used to this abbreviation, it's used quite often in real life, meaning things that aren't online. So they're in real life instead. So the thing about it is, Sherry in her narratology, what she ended up bringing up was she had us read an essay on Beyond Myth and Metaphor: The Case of the Narrative in Digital Media, and we had a really good discussion there. But I will tell you that reading really kept looking. It was definitely written by somebody who I don't think jumps online, plays games, goes in virtual spaces, works in virtual spaces, and then jumps off, offline. I think that it's really, I'm pointing back to a postmodernism where they consider everything hypertext, and looking at what's not real and what's real. So what I really wanted to share you guys was something that one of my colleagues, he did a talk last week, and I'm going to show you with his permission, the PowerPoint that he had. Now, are you guys seeing this on screen okay? Yes? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Okay, so let me, don't look, let me go all the way back. But we've been talking about this a bit, but this is something that goes to how all of our protagonists are really working. Digital nomadism. And basically, I'm just going to click a couple of his slides, and this is what he got from the Nomad Society. And this term's been out there for a couple, maybe 3-4 years. People are tossing it out. Some people are trying to define it and stuff like that. But again, nomads, but spelled with K-N-O. And they're nomadic knowledge workers, creative, imaginative, and innovative people who can work with almost anybody, anytime, and anywhere. And that it's associated with, you know, jobs in the 21st century, knowledge and innovation workers. And really, when you think about it, that's what's being referred to when they met with the union leaders. They were trying to explain to them how they could be just about anywhere, in any internet cafe, anywhere across the world. And I'm just gonna, so you can see a cup of this. You know, greater mobility is creating new opportunities, and then here's some photo shots, and I guess if you looked at our desk might look something like this too. And in the past, we were applied for jobs. Now we're being asked to design our work. And then this was a graphic that he found. You know, what my friends think I do, sit there, you know, like looking at this beautiful scenery and just working. What my mom thinks I do, and you see the picture of the guy walking around with, you know, a CPU and a desktop strapped to his back. But society thinks I do, you know, play music at the street. And I guess I kind of like this graphic a lot, because if you think about the union leaders, you have to wonder what do the union leaders think that these workers are doing? What do they really think that Yasmin and Mala are doing? And it's probably something like this. I think you could do a visual for something like this too. And then if you, the last picture is him sitting on a couch, and it looks like with a bunch of other people, of course, sitting on couches looking at laptops. Then I'll skip through there, and then and this is a picture that he threw in his slide, like real quickly, because of the challenges of if you're a nomad, what you have to deal with. And this is actually, I was talking to him before we were about to do this presentation, and he suddenly dropped off. And I was like, okay. And, you know, so I just sat and continued waiting for him to log in. His puppy, it's like 5 months old, actually chewed through the cord. and then what he put here is, you know, some of the challenges of it. You are IT. There's no one else, you know, who's going. You don't call up somebody on the phone to take care of it. And, you know, you're in charge of your equipment. Sometimes there's working in isolation. And then this is a picture he took right before the presentation. And of course, you know, everybody who saw the presentation was going, where's your cell phone? And he's like, well, what do you think I took the picture with? So I just wanted to throw that out to you, just to get an idea of what the working conditions are like. You know, a factory working condition, the union leaders absolutely knew what that was like. They knew about the heat. They knew about the, you know, how long it took, that what kind of chemicals you had to use for dyeing the garments. But they didn't get this. And so I just wanted to point that out to you guys, and you get your opinions if you if you have any ideas there too. So please get on mic if you let.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
I was thinking that even people who are online and play games like in Inevitable Betrayal, I think we don't, or maybe until we've had this big discussion, maybe we didn't realize what it was like for gold farmers, and that's a whole, you know, so even we who are in the game don't realize that it could be part of someone's job, someone's work. So certainly these union leaders probably don't understand that this is real work. That's all. My 2 cents.
Well, and, a piece of this too, as we're talking about this, the notion of nomads and how work is evolving, especially within the context of this sort of technological environment that's being developed, right? So clearly there's new opportunities, and people are really excited, I think rightly so, about the potential for some really positive changes, especially in terms of how people can work and the kinds of work that they can do. On the flip side, though, I think there's just as equally, and I think this is playing out in the story as well, there's equally a potential for not so good things to happen. So the fact that the technology is there and there's these opportunities doesn't necessarily lead us then to all the good things happening. So you can be a nomad, and you might not have to work in a factory anymore or in a traditional cubicle farm in some office somewhere, but neither do the gold farmers. So for me, a really important question is the dynamic, the social dynamic or the economic dynamic that was behind the factories, that was behind the cubicle farm, is that gone? So the trappings of the office may be gone, but is the system still in place so that now the cubicle is just your where you are at the coffee shop at the beach, or if you're farming gold. I think that's also an important thing to look at and to track as we're kind of looking at, well, what's the potential here? I think the potential is just as great that it goes in this other direction of being sort of assimilated, as many things tend to be assimilated into the system. It's like, okay, well, this is the new office, fine. So, anyways, I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, well, I've just been told that it did not come over. I mean, those of us in Hangout saw it, but it didn't come over to anyone else.
Oh,
so what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a really quick full screen share. So that I can pull it up. So I'm hoping that at this point in time you can see it. It's on our virtual economics resources page, and if you scroll down for week 3, all the way to the bottom, and to continue some of last week's discussions, also take a look at the digital nomad slides. And I'm gonna pull it up here, and there's John's slide. Should be loading. Should be coming over. And I'll just do a couple of the quick pictures. What we were laughing about was of course the different pictures of the desks. This graphic about digital nomads and what do my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what society thinks I do, and what I really do, and just thinking about what this graphic looked like if this graphic was used for someone who was doing the union leaders versus the others. And then this last but not least picture. This last but not least picture, and this is the dog chewing through the wire. So this is all fun. So if you got to see it, great. If you didn't, we apologize, and we'll put the slide, and we'll go ahead and put the slides up. And I'm not sure it came over. Okay.
Oh, that digital Nomad book is for free PDF download. So I put the link in all chat, but I'll put it on the YouTube channel because it's an amazing book. I like free stuff.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment about the education side of it and how is education, public education, K-12 education, even adult education keeping up with preparation of folks to work in this type of an environment? Are we doing it, or does our educational system prepare them for a time that is gone? It certainly prepares them for factory work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I was just mentioning in the chat is that Ken Robinson, his TED Talk that he did where he talked about how classrooms were designed originally on the model of the 19th century factory, and everything was in rows, and you learned in rows.
Mm-hmm.
And what his drive has been is that learning spaces have changed. You know, we've progressed, and so we need to move our teaching styles and our educational models to 21st century because it's just not the factory-based anymore. And that parallels what you're talking with the digital nomad because it's the same thing. Workspaces have changed just like classroom spaces are changing in that it takes, and what's so hard is that that old factory model is very ingrained in us, and it's still being used. But even in the workspace or the learning space, it doesn't matter. That model, I guess it appeals to like people's need for linear straightness or something. But because some people don't like things unless they're in straight lines. And if things are not very structured and in little boxes, some people feel like they don't have control of their environment or don't feel like they're I don't know what it is, but the fact that people work from home or your digital nomad that's got like a kind of looks like my living room.
I think it looks like all of our desks. I think all of us are dealing with. All of us are dealing with something like this.
and just like we're trying to create learning environments because as adults we don't understand how it could possibly be fun to be on the floor on your stomach reading a book, but a 7-year-old or 8-year-old loves that. And it's giving them the freedom to do that. And so it's this change for both learning and working environments to a more open, digitally compatible, open space.
Well, just, an important piece of what I think Trish has said too is just that it's not just that people might, I think, just become comfortable with or uncomfortable with whether straight lines or things are linear. This was what she described has been so normal for such a long time. There's also a prescriptive aspect of it. This is the way work should look. This is proper work.
Yeah.
Something real is being created, right? And all this stuff that you're doing that doesn't look like real work, that's not real work, right? Because you don't have to show up on time at the meeting, and you don't have to sit still for a while, and you're not responding to, the metrics and. So all that there's also that element to it that gives it sort of that cultural reinforcement or that cohesion, right? That makes it make so much sense, and which makes I think the change so difficult. Is like, look, I have this notion of the world I've built on this, that work looks like this, and that's important. Work is important, and being successful within that context is important. And so I think that's an important aspect of when we talk about, well, the technology is changing, the world is changing. Why can't people see this and understand? Is because all their understandings is really invested in this other experience of the world. That was very, very valid when they were coming up.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to just like when Yasmin was talking to the old Union people, and she said to them,
I know these old Union people.
Well, she called them the aunties. She called them the aunties. She talked about their wrinkly midriffs and their saris and stuff.
Okay.
And but when they said that she played Zombie Mecha, she had to explain it to them, and then those old men sat there going, "That's just a game. That's not work." And so there's this notion that just as in the 60s, there seemed to be a generation gap. I don't know if any of y'all were alive in the 60s, but that was a big topic in the 60s with the hippies and everything, was the generation gap. Well, we're hitting a gap again because of the way the internet has moved us from traditional modes of work, play, and communication to these new globally connected modes of work, play, and communication that don't meet those pre-prescribed models, and there's just a lack of understanding.
Yeah, and that's really why I wanted to bring it up really quickly, was this in real life. And even when Sherry had us reading, the defining narratology thing that was, around the turn of the century, which wasn't that long ago. But the thing of it is that the references that were being made in this, beyond myth and metaphor, it seems like it needs to be updated technologically, because it seems like we might have gone a little past this. And another thing I wanted to bring up in our intermission kind of thing is just so people, just so that people can take a look at this. And this is something Sherry pointed out when I was labeling stuff. Game studies, the study of the structure of the game, formalist and semiotic approach. Games. Plural studies, that goes ahead and implies the study of game genres and types of games. So just if you guys are using, for anybody out there using these terms, game studies is what Sherry is teaching us about. Game studies is pretty much what Blue was doing earlier when he was going over the different types of games. So I'm just about to be over and done with, and I'll be turning it over. Okay, we already went over Knowmads, so that was our last, as Trish likes to say, our last neologism for our last one for today. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to turn it over to Chris for virtual economics.
All right. So this week in the text, we covered monetary standards and policy, pyramid schemes, game economics, and economists. So I just picked these three things. We have a couple, we always have gold farming, and lots of things go from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about monetary standards and policies first. So anybody, what is bimetallism? You must speak in stilted tongue as well.
What is what?
Bimetallism.
Bimetallism.
Two metals, gold and
metals,
silver.
Yes, two metals, two. Yes. It is an early monetary standard. The idea is that each unit of currency is tied directly to a specific amount of a precious metal. So in bimetallism, it's typically gold and silver. So Jerry, are you pro gold or pro silver?
Either.
He's like, if I can stack enough of it, either. So the idea behind the bimetallism monetary system is that both gold and silver can be accepted as legal tender in unlimited amounts. The government will also convert metal to currency and vice versa at a fixed rate in unlimited quantities. And as we know in real life, what's the wrong part of this definition?
There are no unlimited quantities.
Yes, exactly. There are no unlimited quantities. So the U.S. figured that out, and they abandoned it in 1873. That's hence the stilted tongue. And this has happened because of the Coinage Act of 1873. Jerry remembers that, like it was yesterday. And and this was the first move towards the gold standard, because basically people didn't like silver. So then in the 1900s, we had the Gold Standard Act, which ended bimetallism in the U.S., and we moved to the gold standard. Then something happened on the way to working towards the gold standard: World Wars. Basically what happened is it led to reserves of gold being drained, lots of debt being incurred by countries that were involved in the conflict. Interesting thing about what happened there is during the World Wars, the U.S. went from a country that owed a lot of money to everybody else to becoming the major lender to the world. And so then what happened is they're trying to figure things out after World Wars and trying to figure out the monetary system and what they're going to do once the World Wars ended. And they met in a place called Bretton Woods. And it was on July 1st through 22nd, in 1944, so 70 years ago. And really what it was is that the first initial meeting happened in Bretton Woods, and then what happened is a series of global meetings occurred. And really what the major impact of this was that most of the world's currencies began being tied to the U.S. dollar. This really was the shift whenever the U.S. became the financial center for the globe, because prior to that it was the European, it was basically the U.K. Was the major financial market was in the U.K. With the world wars, because of the decimation and everything that led to that, the U.S. became the financial center. So basically, other thing happened. International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the World Bank was also founded based on this conference. What's interesting about it is that it really took 2 years to negotiate the treaty. And the reason why is because of I guess the way people describe it is self-interested debate between the U.S., which was the largest lender, and the U.K., which was the largest borrower. So they were trying to figure out, obviously the buyer's trying to figure out a way to pay the least amount back as possible. And of course, if you're the lender, you want to make sure they pay you back the most as possible. So eventually they decided on it after 2.5 years. However, what's interesting about it is that the standard really didn't actually get started until 1961. And they said, okay, let's go ahead and let's do this now. So it's been a couple years since we figured it out. Now we're going to go ahead, we're going to use it. Well, guess what? A decade later, it stopped. So basically it took about 10 years to implement, and then went ahead and in 10 years, it was gone. What happened is Nixon, in August of '71, suspended the gold convertibility, so therefore you could no longer exchange gold for coins in a government-backed way. So the government wasn't exchanging gold anymore. So what resulted is sort of this mix where now today most of our monetary policies are tied to the U.S. dollar or the euro. So those are the two big dollar zones. So this is an interesting area if you're interested in this stuff, like I am. There's tons and tons of reading material out there. So now what you have is a lot of a lot of the world's currencies are tied to the U.S. dollar or the euro. They're affected by free market forces, and of course not tied to precious metals. Now what's interesting is, anybody reading any sort of post-apocalyptic reading?
Who is
What's
it?
the currency of choice?
Scrap metal and water.
Scrap metal and water, yes. But if you watch Revolution, if you watch Defiance or Dominion, different things like that, their currency of choice are diamonds.
What?
Yes, their currency of choice are diamonds in most of the futuristic movies that are out there. Also favored by criminals everywhere as well. So these are the things that you see there. So next on, we're moving on to a pyramid scheme. So what is a pyramid scheme?
Isn't it where, like, I make money by recruiting 3 more people, and then they make money by recruiting 3 more people each, and then that gives me more money, but it's all...
It's all fake because you use other people's money to make money. So you never really start with anything. You have nothing to start with, and you recruit these people, you get their capital, money, whatever, and then you use that to pretend that there's something there. And
well,
that's
exactly.
how it grows.
And really what the pyramid scheme is number one, they've been around forever. Our current incarnations and the language that we hear a lot now is MLM, or multi-level marketing, or network marketing. Not all pyramid schemes are illegal or fraudulent, but the pyramid schemes are around. After all, has anyone looked at corporate structure? Most of your organizational charts are pyramid schemes.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So,
everyone up the pyramid gets a bigger cut of the action, right?
exactly. So again, not all pyramids are illegal. There are a lot of financial fraud that goes through pyramid schemes. So there is a sort of, gray area there with them. Typical idea is everyone recruits 2 friends, and then get your 2 friends to recruit 2 of their friends, and then on and on and on and on it goes. The Federal Trade
Your friend come work here.
Exactly. Yes. And the Federal Trade Commission says it is best not to get involved in plans where the money you make is based primarily on the number of distributors you recruit and your sales to them, rather than on your sales to people outside of the plan who intended to use the product.
That's what I was going to ask was, isn't the legality of it dependent on whether there's an actual product involved or not?
It's again, it's one of those gray areas there. Basically, the Federal Trade Commission is saying be very, very wary. Because if you're not because basically what they're saying here is if you look at your structure and how you get paid, if you are making your money off of the number of people you recruit into the scheme rather than direct sales to people who aren't involved, so your actual consumers, if you're not selling to consumers, if you're just selling to other distributors, then that's a red flag. So, but like I said, not all of these schemes are illegal. So, for those that are financial fraud, basically it requires constant recruitment of new members, and your book talks about this. And this is actually from the SEC site, and this is their example of a pyramid scheme involving 6 people at the top level, and then having them go ahead and recruit people down. And you see it gets rather quickly, where at the time they did this, you can see here it says more than the U.S. population. Once you get to the 11th level. Once you get to the 13th level, more than the world population.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are things that so basically that's what you're looking at. What you're looking at with pyramid schemes is that it's about what you see there. If they're going ahead and you're not, if you're making the most money by recruiting more people to work under you, most likely it's falling into the pyramid scheme. If you're not selling it through consumers, people who actually buy the product and use the product as opposed to people selling the product, then that's more of a legitimate business model.
Well, and I think too an important aspect of this is this is not an either or. So you can have a dynamic where someone is offering something, so there is physically a product, but the bulk of the income that's being generated comes from the recruitment.
Yeah.
Right. So just having a physical product that's there, saying, okay, look, there's a product, doesn't take the curse off it. So that's one aspect of this that can make it kind of tricky. The other thing too, I'll point out really quick, that's very, very common to this type of dynamic, is that the focus of the players is always narrowly focused on the numbers right in front of them, right? That's when it makes sense. It's like, look, if you bring all these people in, you'll get like X number of dollars from each of these people. Isn't that great? And we all just get rich together. There's never an encouragement to stand back and look at, well, how did these numbers that are sitting in front of me play out, right? Which is what we just talked about.
Well, and it's also a place that people don't think of. Most people out there aren't thinking in terms of, they're not really good at exponential math. That if there's 6 people above me and all of us have to recruit X number of people, well, how fast does this pyramid grow? How fast does the base have to get? So, so those are things that you're looking at there. And yeah, I mean, the other thing about this is like I said, I mean, the pyramid structure has been ingrained in us forever. I mean, anybody who does an organizational chart, you're familiar with the pyramid structure. Someone at the top who makes usually the most money, who makes the biggest decisions, they're at the top, and then you have a filter down effect, where there's a bunch of mid-level managers, and then you have the actual workers down at the bottom. So, like I said, so the pyramid structure is very familiar to everybody, and yes, we typically call it hierarchy. But when it comes down to the pyramid scheme, again, the focus is what you're doing is you're using the money. You're just basically generating money off of recruitment. That's really sort of what makes it a pyramid scheme, is if all your money is coming off of the people below you, then and it's just the recruitment, not actual selling a product, then it's typically a pyramid scheme.
Oh, and just really quick to tie this back into some earlier discussions that we've had, and it also happened in the book, that the recruitment, the actual experience of the recruitment, if you look at the underlying sort of emotional dynamic that makes that so effective, it gets back to, for me, it kind of gets back to the Connor experiment, the one thing, right? Where suddenly your perception of the situation gets shifted right? Here's a limited opportunity to get rich, and look at how easy it is. And so you start to, there's that, the adrenaline starts to pump. Your focus starts to narrow, and your entire perception of what's going on gets reframed into this, look at this opportunity, this great opportunity that you're going to miss out on. Why would anyone want to say no to all this money? Suddenly it makes sense, right? Well, yeah, envy or scarcity, right? A response to scarcity and greed, but it triggers off. It's intentionally triggering off that aspect of your mental process that then makes this work. It makes it make sense, right? It's compelling, but it's a con. And I think that's another aspect too. When you're talking about from a consumer protection standpoint, part of it is understanding. Okay, well, what does a con like this, a fraud like this, look like? But I think it's also important to understand, well, what does it feel like? Right? Because those are also warning signs. Do you feel pressure to make a decision now because it's a limited time and the opportunities can be gone if we hang up the phone? You're in a negotiation at that moment.
Yeah, another thing is
hold. So, anyways, I just wanted to point that out because I think that's a very important thing at Doctorow, especially with that particular experiment when he kind of focused on that. I think that's one of the things he's really kind of highlighting is very important in all this, and it's a dynamic that's going on at various times to greater or lesser degree for each of our protagonists, each of our heroes.
Well, exactly, and the book does do a good job of also sort of giving that environmental feeling of being in a pyramid scheme. Because if you're in a pyramid scheme, typically the person above you is heavily, heavily pressuring you, because they're getting pressure from above, and they're heavily, heavily pressuring you to do sales. And usually it is recruit your friends. It's get your friends involved. It is so you have a lot of emotional tie to it as well because you wanted to help your friends are trying to help you, and it just goes over and over and over again. So those are things there, and sometimes they have tragic consequences, like they did in the book where someone consumed rat poison. So those are things that you see in a lot of these financial schemes. Is eventually you do see that they eventually will fail because what happens is that the base gets too big and it's no longer supportable. Cash from the bottom no longer supports the people at the top. You start seeing breakdowns, and then people start disappearing and not returning phone calls and disappearing, and the next people are calling you and you're the last person left because everyone else is jumped. So those are things that you see a lot of this. And actually, if you're interested in that type of stuff, go to the FBI website. There's a link there on the Virtual Economies resource page where the FBI actually lists the different types of financial fraud that are out there. If you're more of you like watching TV, wonderful shows like Hustle, which is on the BBC, or Leverage, which is the U.S. version of Hustle, are out there, and those are TV series that are devoted to the series of sort of your Robin Hood con artists. They're and again, when it comes to financial fraud, you really can never, you can't really entrap someone who is an honest person, because if you think about it, if you're totally without greed and you're looking at all this stuff and you're aware of the financial the financial laws, you're not necessarily going to be, everything's going to seem a little fishy. Sort of like what Jerry was saying. If you're getting a high-pressure thing to make decisions now, walk away. That's usually the best thing. So, why would games need economists? Anyone?
Well, I mean, when we're talking about the motivations for behaviors to engage in an economy, on a certain level, it takes an economist who understands historically, this is how we've thought about and done economies. From an economic standpoint, you're saying, okay, well, these are the factors or these are the characteristics that we believe need to be present, and the dynamics that need to be present in order to motivate people or to have the economy make sense, right? So why would people come back into the game economy and continue to engage, right? So we have to understand, well, how can we structure something that makes sense? And is compelling on that level. So again, that you show up again. Right?
Well, exactly. And the other piece that's there is the game has to be of a certain size. If it's a small game, you're not going to really need to hire an economist to figure things out. But most of the very large games, the MMOs, have economies. Basically, they seek to model real world and manage flow and supply of currency. So a lot of it is the same thing. You can have open exchanges where basically you can actually have an open exchange of game currency for money and vice versa. You can have a closed economy, which means that you can't do that. And you have a hybrid, which means that it limits the exchange and what you can exchange. Example of a limited economy would be something like EVE Online, where you can buy the currency for real world currency. But the problem is that when it comes to purchasing real world items, you're limited to paying. You can pay for your game subscription with ISK, which is the currency there in EVE Online, and you can buy different pieces from the company, but it's actually against their terms of service to sell ISK for actual currency. So you can't actually sell game currency for currency, but you can buy it with real currency. So it's kind of interesting with that. So next up we have. So to manage a lot of this fly, most of them will hire an economist or an economic consultant. They use a lot of different tools to manage the money supply and flow in the game. And so for anybody who's done some economics and taken some economic class, these levers will seem very familiar to you. So the game economic levers are very similar. You look at revenue generation, which is all about how do we increase the supply of money. And that basically the idea is quest payouts. Selling price of items to vendors. So for those of you that sell the gray items to the vendors, games control that cost. They could always increase the gold that you have. Bonus cash for completing content. So finishing dungeons or doing a raid, an LFR, or different things like that. They give you certain amounts of funds for that. Limits on transfers of funds to the realm. So that affects it because people can jump from realm to realm. The exchange rate, if it's an open economy, they can play around with that. And then also you can see by lowering subscription costs. So this is another lever they have by lowering the cost of entry. You have more participants in your game. So that way more players means more people running around, which means there'd be more gold going around in game. So how do we take money out of supply? Well, very similar to what we do in real life. Everyone loves their taxes and fees, right? Well, you have the same thing. You have the same thing in games. You have repair costs, so durability. The cost of owning things is there. The auction house has taxes and fees that are there. They can also affect the transportation or travel costs. Most games, there is some form of public transportation that'll move you around for a faster or convenient sake. And so by increasing the cost of travel, they can pull money out. They can also increase the subscription fees, which means that again you increase the barrier to entry. You increase the cost of entry, so therefore new players aren't coming on, so therefore you have less players and there's less gold to go around. So there's a lot of different things that you can play around with here. And of course, our favorite way to spend our money in games are typically called gold sinks. And the gold sink idea is basically these are things, again, the goal of this is for the game to decrease supply. So the biggest example are mounts. And I know Kay is going to pull up an example of one of the largest gold sinks here in World of Warcraft. And so what she has here is the Reigns of the Grand Expedition mount. And for the low, low price of 108,000 gold, you can buy a yak. And so this is the yak that has the repair person on it and the reforger for those of you that play WoW. But these are the gold sinks that are out there. So those are things that you can look at. And yes, it is a large yak. It's not a mammoth, so I don't know if it wins I don't know if yaks win the Bronze Age fight or the Stone Age fight. But the thing is that you have these mounts that are out there. The other piece of there is luxury items. So these would be the cosmetic armor, aesthetic things to make your toon look better. And you can typically these things would be things that you'd be buying from an in-game vendor, not necessarily the cosmetic armor that you buy at the House of Shemai. So there's different pieces there. Pets are typically gold sinks that are out there. If you're purchasing pets from the vendor or using your gold to buy those, they're gold sink. Crafting. A lot of people consider the crafting professions to be gold sinks because they cost so much to you have to learn you have to go learn the recipe. I guess I should say you have to pay for the privilege of learning the recipes. Then you have to pay for the privilege of getting to a certain level, and then you have to buy all the ingredients and the materials to go ahead and do crafting, unless you have suppliers to give you those things. So crafting is typically considered a gold sink. Rare collectibles. These are things that are typically gold sinks as well. The idea is you're spending more and more and more fees into it, more money into it, pulling more money out of the system. And again, taxes and fees are also considered gold sinks. Also, sometimes sinks are called drains as well. The idea is that basically it's pulling money out of the game. And so these economists have all of these different levers to pull to go ahead and manage the flow of currency. And yeah, really what it is that, as Cory Doctorow talks about, is that there are, the companies can just print more gold because it's virtual currency. They can print as much currency in there as they want. But a lot of the games are trying to sort of find a stability when it comes to the amount of gold in circulation.
Well, Chris, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I think that's kind of puzzling me about this too. And when we talk about virtual currencies and compare the dynamics with the real world currencies, I mean, one of the things I've always thought of is that you look at classical economics, and always when you talk about the discussion of how much currency to pump into an economy, this is concern about inflation or deflation, right?
Yes.
So if you put too much money into the economy, you're going to cause inflation because prices will go up. People will want more for a given amount of good or service. But doesn't that sort of presume that everyone knows how much currency is in circulation? So if I don't know how much currency is in circulation, and I have no clue, and have no clue how much more was put in, I'm not motivated to make any changes to my behavior. So it seems to me that there seems to be a gap between what classical economic theory says, well, this is real life, right? Supply and demand curves, look at how nice this is. Yeah. And so if we increase supply, we blah, 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 blah. Well, that assumes that all the players know that the money supply has changed. Again, otherwise, why would I, on a macro or individual level, change my behavior at all?
Well, and that's the thing is I will say that most of the games that tie their currency to an actual currency, to a real world currency, they do give out reports on the how much money is in circulation. So they do give you those financial reports. Like EVE Online does issue quarterly financial statements about the economy in EVE Online. So you do get a feel for the circulation.
So in that case, they're providing you the information so that you play the game properly.
Yes.
So again, if you weren't provided the cues, then you wouldn't behave in a theoretically appropriate way.
Well, exactly. Yes. You wouldn't necessarily. Yes. You wouldn't behave in a rational manner. Yes. You wouldn't be a rational economic player. Yes.
Right.
Greenspan would be pleased. So, but the thing about it is
bounded rationality. In other words, my rationality is I'm only as rational as the information I'm given. The rationality just doesn't sort of exist there, right? I have to be given cues. I have to be given cues that, okay, well, you're supposed to change your behavior now.
Well, exactly. And now on the macro level, you know inflation when you see it. I mean, on a macro level, you get a feel for if you're in a server and the prices are huge, then for different goods. But again, you're right. You have to have that point of comparison. So for instance, we show that all the time. Whenever we're in Sisters of the Loon, we can pull up an item in Sisters of the Loon server, which is a lower population server, therefore more likely to be affected by extreme shifts in the market, where either someone comes on and just throws on an irrational price, saying that, hey, this piece of cloth armor is worth 1,500 gold, and then you have everyone else has been trying to sell it for 400. So you see some of that, but yeah, a lot of the games are not giving you information to figure out what is the total money supply within the game. But yet they still go ahead and they still play with they still try to play with the market, and they still try to make the market more to behave a little bit more like the real world, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the game feel right. They're trying to get into that uncanny valley, where the virtual starts merging with the real, and it's very hard to tell the two apart. That's what they're trying to get a lot of these larger games. And again, we're talking about large games. We're not talking about very small one-off games or things like that. So some examples of game economists. Apparently there is a body type for economists. And I just happened to pull these two random names, so it's kind of interesting. So we have Edward Casanova, who's pretty well known here in the U.S., and we also have Eyjol Jolfor Gudmundsson, who is used to work for EVE Online. So these are two game economists that are out there, and Dr. Edward Casanova is a PhD in economics. He's currently the professor of telecommunications at Indiana University. And he's written a lot of books, which Kay was showing you there. There is a presentation out there that is he does a pretty good job. I think is a really good presentation. It's a Be a Gamer presentation that's there. So we're going to go ahead and leave that up on the screen once we look at the books. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to look at that. And feel free to, when you're watching it later, you can pause and grab that URL because it's an interesting URL. So some of the books that he has written is Wildcat Currency, Virtual Economies, Synthetic Worlds, and Exodus to the Virtual Worlds. So these are some of his books that he's well known for. He's also published many articles on the economics of games. So we talked about EVE Online a bit. EVE Online is owned by CCP. It was launched in 2003. Basically in 2010, within 7 years, it had 357,000 subscriptions. I haven't really found any more current data on that. They do have a sort of open economy. We talked about that already, about ISK can be converted into different things. They can be converted into your subscription fee. You can pay your subscription fee to EVE with ISK. You can buy items and different sort of swag from EVE with that. And you can also add, you can buy ISK with money. ISK is interesting because ISK is the interstellar credit, is what you call it in EVE Online. It's also the monetary code for the Icelandic krona. It's a very good play. EVE Online is well known for being hard and unfriendly. They sort of revel in that space, it's cold and calculated. And when you mess up in space, no one can help you. So it is unmanaged capitalism. It's also well known for Goon Swarm. Whose claim to fame was finding that one person who bought the largest, most expensive ship ever. Within a week, Goon Swarm had attacked it with a bunch of their friends and had destroyed that ship, which resulted in real-world losses for the person who actually bought the ship, because he paid real money for that. Virtual Bank Heist is also well known in EVE Online, taking over, having spies sneak into the different corporation structures that are out there, and then getting into positions of power, and then embezzling funds, and then taking them over to nefarious organizations. So EVE Online is well known for all this pieces that are out there. Another interesting thing about EVE Online is they're known for their riots as well. So hey, who doesn't love a good riot now and then? But apparently, the Jita riots occurred. Players turned on the game, and they focused. What's interesting is their attack. And their basically their revolution was targeted towards the largest economic centers in the most active galaxy. And so what happened is they actually had ships go out and they actually attacked the bases. And over the course of several days, they actually blew up the bases. So where the people were, because in EVE Online, everything is possible. And so they had enough ships, they had enough firepower that they could defeat the security forces, they could start trying to burn down the base and the different economic terminals, and they blew it up. So basically several things led to this. Pricing decisions, the company had increased microtransaction costs, so again, they're making it more costly to play the game, and also they weren't happy because there wasn't any new content related recently. So after the riots, they went ahead and kicked into overdrive, and the riots resulted in the new Crucible expansion for EVE Online. So I just realized I didn't really talk about Yulin very much. Basically, what he was is that I think that slide accidentally got dropped. But Ylfer, basically, he worked for EVE Online for 7 years. He was a lead economist. Prior to that, he was a dean at a college in Iceland. And in July of this year, he actually left to go back and become the president of the college he was a dean at. So he is no longer with EVE Online, but I'm just checking to make sure the slide's not there. Nope, unfortunately I lost that slide. Anyways, so moving along, we'll now go ahead and look at Area 52 and some Sisters of the Loom. So I'll turn it over to Kate.
Hey everybody, I'm just going to show you a couple of gold sinks because I think you might like them. Now, this is my little level 11 warlock, Taji Momori, the Japanese god of confection. And Taji Momori is somewhere where he really shouldn't be. Okay, this is because he does not have flight yet, because flight, costs a lot of money, and you have to be a certain level. So where I have him right now is the last place that people who level to the max level, which is 90, come to. And when they come to this, they go and they try to go ahead, and I have to be just a little closer. What they try to do is they come to purchase. And if you see here, to be able to fly, it's a really big gold sink, okay? So at level 20, they'll only take 4 gold from you. At level 40, they'll take 50. Level 60, they'll take 250 gold from you. But then take a look. At level 90, they're going to allow you to even fly around here. They're going to take 2,500 gold. And then if you want artisan writing, which is even better, they're going to take 5,000 gold from you here. And I will tell you, a lot of people who power level don't necessarily have the gold on their characters when they reach this level. So this is a huge gold sink. So basically, if it's your first character that you're leveling, you get to level 90, and then you go, oh gosh, of course I want to fly. I want to go everywhere here. And then you come over here, and it practically bankrupts you. So I mean, in our guild, we do have a habit of assisting people on their first tunes who hit level 90. But I just wanted to show you this because it's a huge gold sink. Now I'll turn it over to Chris so he can show you some others.
Yeah, most of the gold sinks you have, we've already sort of talked about. Other gold sink that you have here in a game like World of Warcraft is the transportation costs, and really what you see is, let me navigate through here. Yay! So you see, I just took red damage from falling. That's durability on your armor. It does require you to repair, and so just normal wear and tear on your equipment. In accounting we call it depreciation. Basically, that happens a lot, and even if you don't do anything, your armor will still depreciate over time, I guess just from wearing it, apparently. So your tune must sweat a lot or something and tip the armor. But so basically, you always have to repair it. Now, notice here, there's a flight point I just pulled up. So I'm here at the shrine as well, and you can see there's different prices attached to where you want to fly. Some are higher, some are lower. So you could take the 3 to 5 minutes it would take to fly to where you want to go. Or what you can do for the low price of whatever gold, WoW allows you to click a flight point and you can take the public transit system by yourself. So it's a personalized first-class Griffin. You can go ahead and fly out to where you want to go. And the thing is, what most people do is they'll click on their location. It'll still take you about the same amount of time to get there, even if you flew there. But what they'll do instead is they'll just minimize the screen and go off and do something else. They'll multitask. They'll go and do something else while they're flying, and they can go and do other things. It frees them up to go do other things. Otherwise, if you just fly and you leave your computer alone, you could actually fly off into the water here if you're not careful, or into a mountain or different things like that, and eventually get yourself killed or incur more costs. So that's one of the ways that they'll pull out money from the game as well. We talked already about crafting. There's different professions you have in World of Warcraft, as long as many of the other games that are out there. And those crafting professions also have recipes that are tied to them. And to learn any of these recipes, you do have to pay a fee to learn these recipes. So there's a little bit of different things that are out there, that different ways to sort of, a lot of players feel nickel and dimed. And so there's different ways to go ahead and get there. Of course, it's one of those, die by 1,000 cuts. It's one of those types of issues when it comes to gold sinks.
Okay, so let me take you over to my screen. And anybody here know what I'm showing here on the screen?
Ruby Panther.
Right, it's a Ruby Panther. Now, I am not a jewel crafter who does this in World of Warcraft. I am not one, so I did not make this for myself. One of my guildies, who I have to send a big thank you, a shout out to, Lotus, made this for me. Now, the thing of it is, she was like, oh no charge, no problem. I happen to know that she spent on material probably between 7,000 and 9,000 gold.
But that's not supposed to happen. She's not a professional actor.
Yeah, you're right. Wait a second. Why would someone do that?
For all the costs and not benefit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of what guilds come in. But I have to tell you that even if you are making this is a huge sunk cost. I mean, this is a huge gold sink. I'm just going to go to the auction house here. And then, Chris, if you're anywhere in Area 52 near an auction house, it would be interesting to see what the difference is. So I will just see. I'm not sure if there's one on the auction house. Yes, there is a Ruby Panther on the Sisters of Elune auction house. And on the Sisters of Elune auction house, it is 24,000 gold.
Oh, I wish I could even have 1,000 gold. Oh, I should say 10,000 for the mammoth. I need mammoth.
Yeah, so here is the other piece that's there. Basically, for the Ruby Panther, I know that she had to at least pay 18,000 gold for it, because to make a panther, you have to have one of these orbs of mystery. So that's a sunk cost, because this is a required reagent for the recipe to go ahead and buy that. Sands of Time, that's another piece that's here. That's used for something else, which is the Vial of Sands, which allows you to turn yourself into a drake and give a friend a ride. So you get a two-person mount, basically. Just that you become the bearer of the other person, which we found has some fun, interesting consequences. Like if you go into certain zones, you might shift out of dragon form, and if that happens, guess what happens to your passenger?
Bad things.
Bad things. They learn about what happens in game. In game, when you fall from high heights and gravity takes effect.
Gravity still works in games.
Yes, gravity still does work in games. So there's a lot of different things that are out there you can go ahead and purchase.
Okay, I just flipped over to Area 52. So let me go and take a look and see what's in. Let's see what's in Area 52 here. So let's see about the Ruby Panther here. And again, like we said, two different economies. Oh, they are priced just about the same. Here it's going from 21 to 23.
Oh.
No. No, I mean, it's a little less, but not much at all. And then I'm just going to type up one recent gold sink. They're called Sky Golems. And
They're not that cool.
no, they're not that cool. But I mean, I remember people trying to sell them for a lot more, trying to sell them for about 40,000 K. And they're very, very resource intense. You have to pay a lot of money to get the resources, and they're just not selling well at all. Here's an example of something that was introduced that people thought they'd make money on, and getting it, and it never happened.
Yeah, and that's one of the risks you take with playing around with this, is that you do end up with, hey, maybe you may end up with not necessarily getting what you want out of it, and that's sort of the risk and reward that you have in a game like that.
Well, or less charitable way of putting it is that it depends on the greater fool dynamic to work. That's what speculation, right? So, real world tie, historical tie. Although you don't need to go back to the tulip, go back to the whole tulip episode to illustrate how that happens. It happens every day. Today, it's just that we're not bidding up and trading off and dumping tulips. It's stocks of various companies, it's various commodities, but that's speculation. So and again, just even from my experience in world, you can illustrate this. It's interesting how a story can start to evolve, or buzz can start to evolve around a particular commodity or thing. Here's the new shiny. Oh my gosh, you got to have this because there's so much energy around this. The stock is moving, this commodity is moving, this thing is moving. Everyone gets whipped up into a frenzy. Again, we're back in the lab with Connor. And, people start trading, right? So chances are, the folks who started it at the beginning, or even maybe the folks who whipped up the frenzy, are probably holding a supply. They get out there. The folks who are coming along snap it right up, hoping that the next person coming along is willing to pay even more for it, until the game falls apart.
Well, exactly, and that's what you see a lot of. That's one of the things you see in business. It's kind of interesting. You get into economics, and a lot of the schemes. That it's the same thing with the schemes. Is that you get into that mindset as well. It's like, well, it was funny because some of the things I have always heard in my former life, where I was the SSC director for Small Business Development Center. We would have people coming in going, well, I'm going to make this product for rich people because they're just going to buy it. And I'm like, okay, well, would you buy your product? They're like, no. It's like, okay, so your entire business is based on the greater fool theory. Is that you think that people with money are going to be a greater fool than you are? So I mean, those are things that you see every day in business, which is kind of interesting too. It applies, like I said, everyday business applies in game and without game. So it's one of those things where it keeps you on your toes, I guess. All right. So, predictions. Back to Blue.
All right, guys. So predictions. So we're starting part 3 Ponzi, and I think we're reaching the climax of our book, and lots of things are happening. Mala's probably being taken to get fixed up. Lou and G are running from the police. And we all finished with the Webleys saying they should have killed us. So they're going to come back with more fervent, I don't know about evil revenge, but I mean, they're going to come back with more steam, more enthusiasm, and more energy to take on what they were doing. So, what kind of predictions does everyone have? I'm hoping reaching towards a happier ending, but I'm kind of just Kano doesn't sound like he's going to be doing anything good, so I just want him to just get into a coma and not do anything, because I just see bad things happening with him being involved.
Well, I like happy endings, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And looking at week 4, that we're going to be talking about ethics, I think that's going to be sort of a realization for a lot of people, Mala in particular. I think a lot of people are doing the right thing now. Mala is not. But I think she's going to turn, because I think who she is a good person. That's my prediction.
Okay, I'll tell you mine. I've seen this enemy force amassing here in the Firelands. It's been rumored to be called the Inevitable Air Force. I believe that this massing along the border of the Firelands will have implications in in the book. Now, I don't know what anyone else thinks.
a protest. In-game protests. Oh yeah, I'm with Grid. I want the happy ending. It's just these characters have been through so much already. I don't know. I just want them to finally be there and be. They gone through lots of trials and tribulations, and they need to at least come to some kind of not like reward, but like reach that boon. Because I mean, at least Lou finally met rescue a visit from the goddess. Is what is it's in mythic storytelling where you have like the hero's journey, and having G come in is kind of like the rescue from the goddess. Well, she gives help, she gives shelter, and she gives some words of wisdom that help the hero to continue. This is something that happens a lot in stories from mythologies. So I'm just hoping that their meeting will be very good for the cause. Anyone else with predictions?
I don't know. I don't know about predictions, but I think I'm for a young adult novel. Again, I think I've said before, I've not traditionally read young adult fiction very much, but I have to say that I am impressed with Dr. O's ability to build this tension. And I think I find myself wanting kind of the Hollywood ending for these folks, right? That yes, they struggle and they're beaten down, but they get back up, and then ultimately they prevail, and all good things are suddenly happen. But I think he's a good enough writer that he doesn't. I don't assume that at all. At this point, knowing what I know, I mean, it could get terribly worse. I mean, I could also imagine this ending bleakly. Anti-Hollywood ending. So I just that's my comment is at this point I'm impressed that he can keep me guessing that way.
All right, we have our predictions. So, and part of our wrap up, we will have our week 4 overview for Track 2 for the win for Virtual Economies. It'll be Tuesday morning on August 5th. So we'll see you guys then. Thank you all for helping us out today and staying with us. As always, this is a wonderful chat, and we always go over time, no matter how much time we set. So thank you all for listening, and everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.